Hey everybody, it's Greg here again with another video. This time it's a Samsung dryer. This thing's about 3 years old. They say it's not heating, which is a very common thing for Samsung, so I don't doubt it's got some issues with the heater. But this is going to be part of a new series I'm going to start doing, diagnostics. So this will help technicians even out in the field or for the homeowner trying to diagnose what the heck is wrong with their machine, how I go about diagnosing things. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so with diagnostics, the way I go about it is usually I test for power at the wall first. You're checking for 240 volts. Once you know you have that and the breaker's not half blown or something like that, then we can start it up and verify the problem. Just make sure that it is not heating and it's not just heats for a little bit and then shuts off, because that can be different issues. So we'll get the power going here. You want to put it on like a time dry, because then it won't shut off on you, because it's a manual cycle. And we can start that. Make sure the temperature is on high. It helps to heat things up a little faster. So I've already ran this. I know that it is not heating. So what we're going to do is shut it off and so yeah, you can feel inside, you can tell there's no heat. So where do we go now? First things we always do is unplug it from the wall. So I will do that. You can turn it off too, I guess. So you can either unplug it from the wall or you can flip the breaker off, whichever is easier. Sometimes it's hard to get to the back of these guys. So the next is we got to get inside. So we got to take this guy apart. Now on this one, the top flips up. There's a couple of clips that are right about here that we have to push in with a putty knife and get this top to pop up so we can get to all the screws. So we'll get my putty knife. Okay, so it can be tough to find these guys, and a lot of the time it's fairly tight. But once you feel that little, when you push it in, that little clip, once you can push it in, and it gives resistance, but it lets you push it in a little bit, then you know you're on the clip. The other one's just over here. Sometimes they're really tight if they've never been opened before, so that's why I give it a hit like that. It gets it to come up a little easier. So the wiring on this is fairly tight, so I always take it out of these little clips first. That way we get a little bit extra. I don't think I'll be able to flip up the top like I normally do, but we'll see. No, not quite. So we're gonna have to undo everything without having this held out of the way. Just kind of a pain in the butt, but that's the way we'll do it. Okay, so I got my Phillips screwdriver, which is the star. There's 3 screws that run across here. There's 3 in front of it on this panel here, but we don't want to undo that one because it doesn't actually get us in. So we'll take these 3 screws off here that are on this gray ring piece. Once we get those out, there'll be some screws in the front behind the door. So these are held on by these little clips in the corners, If you push these down, this whole panel will come forward, but we need to take a couple more screws off before we pull that ahead, or we might bust something there. Okay, so this screw right here, we can take off. And then there's two more. Let's see if I can just show you again. So there's two more down here. So right there and right there. We'll take those off, and then this whole panel will want to fall forward, so we'll have to hold it a little bit and just make sure it doesn't fall on you. I always put my knee up against it, or even my head up against it if I have to, just to help to support this panel, just in case somebody's been in here before and bent those little tabs up the top there down too much, and they don't hold the whole panel and they'll fall off on your head. So I'm just going to lift up a little bit over these little notches, and we'll have to watch that wiring. I'm going to take it out of this clip too. So this wiring connects to a door switch. Alright, so this is in behind that panel. Where that wiring goes is to that door switch right there. So we're just going to disconnect that wiring, and then we'll just probably drape it over the edge over there just so it doesn't get in the way. Okay, so we got that unplugged. Watch when you're unplugging it, because you have to pull it sideways, and this panel right here is like a razor blade. So pull it without sliding your hand or arm or whatever along this panel, because that will cut you. So at the bottom of this is just the little pieces that it sits in. So it just lifts up. Sometimes it's a pain. It just lifts straight up off those little clamps that hold it in on the bottom there. And then we can move the panel to the side. Alright, so with that panel off, we can see the heater's right there. That's what this box is right here. It sits on this little riser piece. So the wiring and stuff like that is, I don't even know if you can see it. It's back there. You can just, there we go. The red and blue are the wires that are connected to the heater, and the other ones back there are connected to thermostats. So I'm going to take off one of those leads, either the red or the blue, whichever one comes off easier, and then I'm going to use my meter and test for resistance. And we'll see at this point, without taking it apart any further, if that heater's bad. Alright, so yeah, that's the blue and red right there. I got you a little closer. Come off nicely. You can always use a flat blade screwdriver. You just get in kind of behind it and pry it off. Okay, so the red one came off. So now we'll take our meter, and I'll show you guys the meter end of things here. But we're going to put one connector on where that red wire just came off, and you got to feel around a little bit. It's tough to see in there. And then one on the blue, and then you'll be able to see what you're getting for resistance. Alright, so I'm going to put these meter leads on where that red wire came off, and that blue wire is, and let's see what the meter says. All right, so that just says OL, so that's that means that heater is busted. So just for fun, I like to take the leads and connect them to the case just to see if it blew out a lot, and now it's testing the case, which it's not. So we know it's just blown. Okay, so now that we've tested it, we know that that heater is shot. While I'm in there, just because we'll have everything apart, I'm going to test the thermostats too. They'll more than likely be good, but I may as well test them since we got everything out. So we'll start on ripping apart. So there's 4 screws. One there, and then on the other side, the exact same. And then there's one hiding. Let me show you a little better. There's one kind of hiding right there. So we'll take that one and these 4 off, and that's it for now. Okay, so we got that one screw out there, and we just got one more screw on this guy. Once I get this out, this whole thing will come out, but we have to undo this connection here before we get too far, and we're holding it trying to undo a connection. So this panel we'll lift up. You'll see in these little brackets that sit in these little cutouts. So you just have to lift it up and up on this side, and then this will come out. Sometimes you have to hold that drum because the drum kind of wants to lean on those bottom rollers heavily, and then you can't take that panel off. So while I'm taking this apart, there's a couple rollers on this front panel. So always make sure that they spin good, and they're actually really good. This thing is pretty new. So yeah, make sure those are good. I can check inside of this vent housing and see if it's all built up with crap, which it's not, because that's fairly easy to clean out at this point. So we will keep going. So the next is the lovely belt. So I'll pop that belt off. It's tough to show you what the heck I'm doing in there, so I'll show you after I take it out. So you take it off the idler, take it off the motor, and then this whole thing will lift out. Usually that belt gets caught on something, so I just take it off the drum at this point. So we can get that drum out of the way. And as I'm taking the drum off, I'm checking these felts that run along here. Sometimes they rip, sometimes they just are missing. So we want to check that. So we get this belt out of the way. We can check that belt too. Belts seem to last forever. I don't know what the heck it is with these belts, but there must not be a lot of tension on them whatsoever. But so you can check along these grooves. If you see a lot of cracking or cuts or anything like that, you can replace the belt. They're fairly cheap. So here is the heater assembly, the blower assembly. You got the motor just behind that. The idler, I really look at these Samsung idlers because they're bad. They're not great. I carry a lot of these things on my truck because I'm replacing them all the time. So while we're in here, I'm going to test these other the thermostats that are on the side of the heater housing, and then we'll rip this heater out of here. All right, so here's that heater. May as well disconnect that blue one off there because we're going to be changing this. So if you don't, if you can't remember, where these wires are going to go because you're going to be taking them all off, take a picture of them now, just so you know where the heck these all go, because they're supposed to go in certain spots. I know where they go on these guys, so I don't need to do that right now, but that is something you can definitely do. All right, that's all of them. Lay them down out of the way. So I'll take that meter again and check. Check for resistance. Try to put it so you guys can see that. Okay, so you go from one side to the other, and it should read very close to 0, if not 0. So that's good. And this guy over here, and we're getting 0. That's perfect. So we know those thermostats are good. The heater is the only big problem here. We're going to take this the whole heater out. So it's this whole housing we're going to take out because we're going to split the two halves and get to the heater inside. So there is a screw right on the front of this, connecting it to this bracket. And there's a screw right here. Sometimes it'll have this, sometimes it won't. It just depends on your model. Put that under there. And then you just lift up a little bit and then slide it out of that back piece there. So this little tab here hooks into here, so the heater can't come out. Not that it would, because it's already got a couple screws in it, but just extra safety, I guess. So we'll take this heater apart. So it's just a bunch of screws all along the perimeter of this guy. So get these screws all out here. I think there's 3 on this side, 3 on the other side, and then we're going to have to take off these, at least one of these screws holding the thermostats in, because that connects between the 2 cases. The screws aren't really important to keep separate. They're pretty much the same screw. So yeah, get those out of there. Okay, so we get all those screws out. Now there's these little bent over tabs here. So we got to straighten them up. So I'll just use my pliers to do that. And that's just extra, I guess. You want these to be really straight, or it doesn't come off or go back on very nice. Straight as you can get them anyway. You can always straighten them even more once you get it off, but geez, that was really on there. So yeah, it just comes off. We can set that aside. And maybe I'll straighten these now before I forget. Okay, so that is the heater right there. So what we're going to do is, these have got little tabs also that are bent over. You'll see them on yours. I know it's kind of hard to see on here, but if we bend those tabs back over, then we can pull these pieces through. So I'll do that. These ones are usually a little nicer than those ones for the lid. So that is the heater. Now, just for the fun of it, I guess, I always go along and see if I can find the break. Yeah, there it is right there. So yeah, that's what caused this heater to blow, was that breaking. So we'll throw the new one in and put this all back together. With these coils, I try not to touch them very much. I don't think all the oils and stuff that are on your hands do these any favors. Could make hot spots for all I know. So I just don't touch them. That was the rule, 15 years ago when we used to do anything with heating elements. So I imagine it's still the same now, although I haven't been told so. So it doesn't matter which side it's necessarily up or down, because these come off. One comes off the top, one comes off the bottom. So I have to put these in and bend that little tab. Just makes it a little easier to do it now. Okay, so when you're putting this heater on, make sure that all your holes are going to line up, because there's actually an offset on one of these sides, which is that guy right there. So everything's going to line up like that. Then you can put the other one through the hole and bend that little tab. Now I'm going to kind of bend it back just a little bit so it's going to be able to sit back here. The whole thing will squish in, everything will kind of change quite a bit, but what you want to do right now is make sure that these lines coming off here, you can see that or not, but these lines here aren't touching the case. They're not going to touch the case when we put the top on, because that's will cause it to short out and blow the heater. So we don't want that. After we put this top piece back on, we'll also check inside of there just to see and make sure that nothing is touching that case. So bend that tab back down. Now this part is kind of a pain. I usually take a pick and stick it through the holes and move stuff around to try to line it up, or if I can get any holes that are lined up, like these guys right here, I'll run them in first, just because it's nothing else is gonna line up nicely. So at least if you can get one or two screws in here, then you're doing good. Okay, so it took me a little bit, but I got all those screws back in. So what you can do is look through here, and you'll notice down below that element, none of those coils are touching the case. Up above here, none of those coils are touching the case. So that's what we want to see. We'll check the front too. It's going to be the same all the way through, but just to check these wires here, there and there, and they're all good. If they're close to the case, I'll put a little bit of a bend on them to get them away a little bit, but other than that, we are good to go. So like I said, this little tab here is going to sit into this back housing, and there's those two little teeth that sit in grooves. You'll feel the whole thing go in. What you can do after it goes in like that, check around the hole outside to make sure it actually went inside of that tunnel. Once that's good, we put this front screw back in. And then that screw that comes from the top here, right there. No, we didn't forget about you. And then I always bend this so it's fairly 90 degrees to the rest of the housing. There's no point in having it bent out or bent in. So the hookups, we can hook back up. I'm kind of lucky because mine stayed fairly together. So it's all good. Make sure that none of these are kind of bent up because of these tabs, because then you might hit the drum, because the drum comes fairly close to these guys. So yeah, we can throw our drum back in, throw the belt on. I'll check these rollers while we're sitting here. Oh, those are great. Wow, those are good rollers. I haven't usually been able to say something like that about Samsung, but I think they kind of up their game in their new stuff, so that's good. What I'll do too is, since I'm in here, I'm going to clean out all the lint and stuff in the back and around the motor. I'll just get my vacuum out. You can do it when you have the heater out. I did under that section of the heater, so I don't need to worry too much about that, but I will do that and we'll throw that drum back in. Okay, so I vacuumed it out and put the drum back in. I hooked on the belt. When I hook on these belts, I always give it at least a couple turns, kind of holding it as much where it should be riding as possible, just to make sure that belt seats on the drum and the idler and the motor properly, because if they don't, you put this all back together, you go to start it, and that belt jumps off, you got to rip everything back apart. So usually find things change mostly in dryers when you vacuum them out, but I found this pin. It's almost like a baby diaper kind of pin. But look at the size of that thing. If anybody knows what the heck that would be used for, let me know in the comments, because I've never seen a pin quite that big. Anyway, we'll put that this part here back on. So how I do it is I hook the top little lip piece here to the drum, and then lift and hook the two top pieces in. We can't get the top and the bottom in yet. So what we're going to do is put pressure on the bottom and turn the drum. What will happen is that drum will seat onto these front rollers. If you don't have that, it's going to be pretty tough to hook in these bottom ones. So we'll hook in these bottom ones and make sure this whole panel is on there like it should be. So we're in there, and there, and there, and there. So we'll put these 4 screws back in, the one down here on this blower housing, and we can put the rest of it back together. Okay, so we got those 4 screws in, the one on the blower housing, and also don't forget to rehook up your electrical going from this piece down to the base. Then we can put this panel back on. So you'll see the little catches that it sits in. We'll just set it right in there. It'll drop in once that door doesn't hit you. And then we can rehook up the door switch here, can be a bit of a pain. But like I said, remember to watch the lip of this piece here because it's sharp. Door doesn't exactly stay closed the greatest. So now we've got that hooked up, we can hook our wiring back into these clips. The problem with this is you can't have the top all the way up because it pulls on the wiring too much. They made it pretty short. So we'll put these 3 screws back in and then put the 3 in the front, and then we're ready to test. Okay, so just in case you mix up your screws, so the ones with the washers will be the ones that go in behind the door here. The ones without the washers are the ones that go up top. So, close that door. These clips, all you gotta do is push back down, and it'll lock into place, so it's not going nowhere. So I'll plug it in. And turn the power on, put it on time dry, and then make sure it's on high. Time doesn't really matter, we're not going to be testing it that long anyway. That's start button. We'll let that run for a minute and you should be able to smell a bit of a burning smell. That is normal. Because they put a coating at the factory on these heaters. So just let that run for a minute. Okay, so I was going to sing a little song, I guess. So yeah, tested about 10 minutes and it heats fine. Before I ever sell these, I will actually put a load of wet towels or something in them, run them through the cycle and make sure that the machine works fine and it's not going to trip on thermostats or something goofy like that. But yeah, that's the whole thing. That's diagnostic, where we found out it wasn't heating, then taken it apart, tested parts, found the heater was blown, replaced the heater, put it all back together.